10 years ago, this video would have sounded absolutely ridiculous. Christianity was dying. At least that's what everyone thought. Church attendance was dropping. Young people were leaving religion. The internet belonged to the atheists. If you're around YouTube back then, you will remember it. Debate clips, destroyed with facts and logic, epic music playing while some poor youth pastor got turned into a meme. The future was obvious. Science was in, religion was out. So here's my question. If atheism won, why are some of the world's biggest atheist thinkers moving back toward Christianity? Not all of them, not even close, but enough of them that something strange is going on. And here's the weird part. Most of them aren't changing their minds because of science. It's almost the opposite. To understand why, we need to go back to the moment atheism won, because I think the victory created a problem nobody saw coming. See, back in the early 2010s, new atheism was everywhere. And to be fair to them, they made some good points.
How you can justify wanting to take something away from people, from 95, that gives meaning to 95% of the American people, and replace it with something that gives meaning to just 5% of the American people?
Well, what an incredibly stupid question.
Christians had become lazy thinkers. Bad arguments were everywhere. Questions about suffering got brushed aside. Science was treated like the enemy. A lot of believers simply weren't ready for serious criticism. The new atheists forced Christianity to grow up a bit. That's true. But they were so focused on one question that they missed another one. Their question was, why should we believe in God? Which is a fair question. But after that comes another serious question, a much harder one. Okay, now what? Because tearing down a house isn't the same as building a new one. You can tell people life has no built-in meaning. You can tell them morality came from evolution. You can tell them consciousness is just chemistry. Fine. Let's say all of that is true. Then comes the question nobody can avoid forever. Why get out of bed tomorrow morning? That question, it hit harder than people expected. And that's where things started getting interesting, because something strange started happening. Religion kept falling, science kept winning, technology kept improving, yet people didn't seem happier. You can see it now. Loneliness has gone way up. Depression has gone way up. Anxiety, way up. People trust each other less. Communities have started falling apart. Birth rates have crashed almost everywhere. Now, before anyone gets angry in the comments, I'm not saying atheism caused all of this. Life is more complicated than that. I'm asking a different question. What if religion was solving problems we didn't even know it was solving? Because religion wasn't only answering questions about the universe, it was answering questions about suffering, about sacrifice, duty, about why fathers stay with families, why mothers sacrifice for their children, why people choose responsibility over pleasure. Remove religion if you want, that's your choice. But what if you accidentally removed something else at the same time? That question brings us to one man who changed the conversation online, and he didn't do it by defending miracles. Jordan Peterson didn't start with God. He started with suffering, with responsibility, with meaning. He asked a question that hit millions of people right between the eyes. What if religion wasn't trying to be science in the first place? What if it was trying to teach human beings how to live?
There's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now, you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because this, well, it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived, plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. Yeah. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ.
Suddenly, the debate changed. People stopped asking, could Noah fit all the animals on the ark? They started asking, what happens to a society that loses its reason to sacrifice? That's a different conversation altogether, especially for young men, because modern culture tells young men what they're allowed to do. It doesn't spend much time telling them what they're there for. And Peterson wasn't the only one noticing this. One historian stumbled into the same discovery by accident. I'm talking about Tom Holland, and no, I'm not talking about Spider-Man, the other Tom Holland, who is lesser known, the historian. He spent years studying ancient Greece and Rome, and he noticed something weird. The ancient world wasn't nice. The strong ruled by force, and the weak suffered. Power mattered. Winning mattered. Compassion wasn't the center of society. Strength was. Then he looked at modern Western values, human rights, equality, care for the poor, the idea that every human life has value, and he realized something uncomfortable. Those ideas aren't normal, they are Christian.
The ancient world. When you penned that article, I think it was for the New Statesman, where you said what I got wrong, yeah. and you sort of came out, as it were, and said, as far as my values and background are concerned, I am a Christian.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see the response to that, because I saw lots of atheists and humanists saying, "Oh, hang on, democracy, that goes back to the Greeks. Don't pretend that Christianity gave us everything we're grateful for." But you honestly think that actually people simply haven't appreciated just how much we owe to the Judeo-Christian?
I think. I mean, if we're talking of Paul, I think of him as a kind of depth charge, deep beneath the foundations of the classical world, and it's not anything that you particularly notice if you're in Corinth or Alexandria, and then you start feeling this kind of rippling outwards, and by the time you get to the 11th century in Latin Christendom, everything has changed. And you have this, I think essentially what Paul's significance is that he sets up ripple effects of revolution throughout Western history. So the 11th century, with the Papal Revolution, essentially it establishes this idea that society has to be reborn, reconfigured, that vested interests have to be torn down. And then the Reformation, what we call the Reformation, is a further ripple effect of that, and the Enlightenment is a further ripple effect of that. And very interesting. It spilled out so much that now in the 21st century we don't even realise where these ripple effects are coming from. We just take them for granted.
Most secular people think they live in a post-Christian world. Holland's argument is different. He says we're still living inside Christianity. We've just forgotten where the furniture came from. That's a fascinating idea, because it creates another question. Can you keep the fruits after cutting down the tree? One famous atheist decided the answer was no. Ayaan Hirsi Ali shocked almost everybody. For years, she was one of the biggest atheist voices in the world. Then she became a Christian.
This is all obvious nonsense. This is all theological bullshit. And the idea that humanity is born in sin and has to be cured of sin by Jesus being crucified, Jesus being punished for all our sins. And that is a morally very unpleasant idea. I'm sure you must agree about that.
I find that Christianity is actually obsessed with love, and that the teachings of the teaching of Christ, as I see it, and again, I'm a brand new Christian, but what I'm finding out which is the opposite of growing up as a Muslim, the message of Islam. But the message of Christianity I get is that it's a message of love, it's a message of redemption, and it's a story of renewal and rebirth. And so Jesus dying and rising again, for me, symbolizes that story. And in a small way, I felt like I had died and I was reborn. And that story of redemption and rebirth, I think makes Christianity actually a very, very powerful story for the human condition and human existence, and the pain of suffering, but also our internal, the recognition of what you call sin, but perhaps the character defects, that both good and evil are there, but that both good and evil are in us. I think those teachings in Christianity are far more powerful and have led to, I think, the flourishing of Western civilization.
Her reason surprised people. She didn't say she found proof of God hidden in a math equation. She didn't say scientists convinced her. She said Western civilization needs Christianity if it wants to survive. You can agree with her, you can disagree with her, but that's a serious argument. And it points towards a bigger question. What if civilizations need sacred stories the same way bodies need skeletons? Take away the skeleton and the body doesn't disappear immediately. It just struggles to stand up. Then there's Alex O'Connor, and his story is interesting for a different reason. Alex O'Connor hasn't become a Christian, at least not yet. But compare his conversations today to the ones he used to have 5 years ago.
But you've had such a journey and you've met so many amazing people and you've debated so many different angles and things.
Yeah.
Where's it led you to?
It's led me to, well, I used to be quite on board with the new atheism stuff. I've spoken about this a lot on my show.
What does that mean?
You know, like the sort of Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, it was really popular, the debates that they were doing, they called it new atheism.
Yeah.
And it was this body of like atheist thought with the God delusion, this kind of stuff, which was really popular. And it had this sort of quite strident, debate me bro kind of attitude. And I was really swept up by that. I thought that was really exciting and cool. And I was beginning to sort of shake that off and grow up a bit, essentially. And then running the podcast, what I've realized is that this is far more interesting and intricate. And I would say plausible than I'd given it credit for before.
He sounds different, less tribal, less interested in winning and more interested in understanding, more comfortable saying, I don't know. That might be the biggest shift happening online right now. People are becoming less certain, not more. Because the deeper we look into reality, the stranger reality becomes. Nobody knows where consciousness came from. Nobody knows why there is something instead of nothing. Nobody knows where objective morality comes from. Nobody knows why mathematics describes the universe so well. The more we learn, the more mystery we find waiting for us, which finally brings us back to our original question. Why are some atheists becoming Christians? I don't think it's because science failed. Science is amazing. I don't think it's because atheists suddenly became irrational. Many of these people are brilliant. I think it's because human beings discovered something old, something simple. An explanation isn't the same thing as meaning. Knowing how something works doesn't tell you why it matters. Human beings don't just need answers, they need purpose. They need belonging. They need something bigger than themselves, because every society worships something, whether it's money, politics, status, power, the nation, the self. People don't stop worshiping. They just change the object of worship. So maybe the real question isn't, why are atheists becoming Christians? Maybe the better question is this: what did they find that they couldn't find anywhere else? And if more people start asking that question, the next 10 years could look very different from the last 10. Guys, if you like this content, consider liking the video, leave your sentiments in the comments, and also subscribe to the channel so that we can continue figuring out whatever this is together. Until next time, from Kenya with love, peace.